Hello, thank you for coming to Muncie's Pride. Today's episode is about queer conversations and being black and queer in Muncie.
Hi, I'm Christian. I am 24. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I was 17 when I first came out. It was, I know there are many people that had rougher experiences than I did, but when I came out, I came out to my parents 3 times, and the first 2 times I was coming out of anesthesia. And my dad recorded me because I was being funny, and then eventually I was just started rambling off, and he showed me this video when I was a bit more sober and was like, "Isn't that funny?" And it's like, "Yeah, it's funny." And then had another surgery a few months later and ended up standing up on my hospital bed and was like screaming some that these things that I've like had bottled up inside me. And Dad just like didn't talk to me for a little while after that. And I remember one day I just set a time and I said, by this time on this day, I'm gonna tell them. And like a natural procrastinator, probably about 5 minutes after that time, I told my parents, and I didn't talk to my dad for about the next year. And my mom and I were still okay, but we just pretended like it never happened. And she told me that that wasn't something we were going to talk about or deal with. And that was about how that went for me. But I found support with my church back in Pennsylvania, where I was living at the time. I went to a Brethren church, and although the Brethren church as a whole does not have a stance on how they are affirming, my particular church did, and their stance was that everyone's personal relationship with God is their own business. And they really helped me to kind of explore what I was feeling and to come to terms with my sexuality.
Hello, my name is Saquon Clark. I'm 22 years old. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I was 13 years old. Didn't really come out. I was more outed and found out when I was when I was 13. My mom came across. Well, sorry. When I came out, it was a very violent, traumatic experience for me. I came home one day from school, and my mom found out some lip gloss I had in my pocket. You know, I'm so trendy. And that as a little boy, I've been wearing around school some lip gloss, and she was, as a black mother of a black son, she had this expectation of me to be this strong black man, to grow up and be this, residual strong person to live and be proud of. And apparently being gay wasn't one of the things to be proud of. So when she found out, when she seen it, one of the things that she did was to beat me, put me in a dress, and take pictures of me, and told me that if she ever catches me put lip gloss again, then she'll show the whole world the pictures that she took of me, and tell the whole world how much of a sissy I am. Not to say that I never had any type of support. My aunt showed me a gay organization, much like Muncie Outreach, because I'm from Washington D.C., of course, and but most of the time I would look into myself for hope and support, and because my aunt wouldn't always be there. My aunt wouldn't always be, she wouldn't be there at my school. She wouldn't be there at home with me. She wouldn't be there all the time with me. So one of the things I had to do, that I would always have to be there for myself before I would rely on somebody else to be there to comfort me or to be there for me to make me feel better about myself. I would have to make myself feel better about myself. And I would have to be strong for myself and live for my truth and find peace. And that just drove a lot of people crazy, you know?
My name is Matthias Miles. I'm 21. My pronouns are he, him, his. I first came out to my grandparents who raised me when I was 13. I guess back up a little bit, I actually came out to myself at around 12 or 13. And then about a year or so on later, around the start of high school, I came out to my grandparents, and I more worried myself about coming out than my family really was. Because even though I had grown up in a very white, Catholic, kind of upper middle class upbringing, my family since has been very supportive of me, and they are a part of my support system, as well as many friends I've made since, and now my significant other, Saquon. And as well too, similar to like how Christian mentioned, I have a supportive and affirming faith background and church community in the Episcopal Church, and since I've become a student at Ball State, I have become the senior peer minister at Grace Village, and which is one of the only accepting and affirming campus ministries.
My name is Dave Franklin. I am 54 years old. My coming out experience was like many in my generation. You knew, but you didn't say a thing. And my experience was I came out to myself finally. I guess I'd known for years and years and years until about 15, 16. But I knew growing up in Elkhart, Indiana. See, I didn't grow up in Muncie, but Muncie and Elkhart have a lot of similarities in population. You know, how everything's diverse. The only difference is Muncie has a university. But I knew that, one, in high school in the mid-'80s, that was super not cool. So I plotted and planned and knew that when I came to Ball State, fortunately they're tearing down La Follette because I blew that mofo. Because for years I knew who I was. I felt like once I came to Muncie, I felt like I'm free to do what I wanted to do. So from that perspective, I really felt like that coming out was a super, super liberating kind of thing. Not that I was oppressed, and not that many people were surprised. It's just when you don't put the words to it, I think a lot of times people, especially parents, are cool with that situation. I find support. I mean, you know, my family is so fractured that I had no other choice but to find support in other my community, friends, things of that nature. And you don't grow up biracial and gay and not have some support system of your own. Because if you don't have it for yourself, if you can't take care of yourself to some level, it certainly would have been a really, really, really difficult task to kind of come to where I needed to be with my gayness.
My name is Rashad Greenleaf. I'm 19. My pronouns are usually he, him, his, but sometimes my girlfriends use she, her, hers. I came out when I was 12. I knew when I was younger, but I would always gaslight myself, and my dad was just very he's very hyper masculine, so I just never knew, and I never knew any actual gay people, you know. So growing up, it was always gay jokes. Gay was something you could call someone, but like we didn't know anyone who was like a living, breathing person and gay. So it was hard for me to like actually materialize like this is an actual serious identity, and there are like people that are actually gay but like around that time, like I still had those feelings, obviously, but like it's hard to sort of be like, this is, because I just felt like I wasn't allowed to like have those feelings. I don't know. It's like I didn't feel like that was like a possibility. It's like it's like something I knew I wanted, but it's like I didn't know if I could have it, I guess. And after like my parents divorced, I was away from my father, and being away from my father was kind of like a weight lifted off, because I just didn't have that like hyper masculine voice in my ear constantly like gaslighting me. And when I got to middle school, which is when I came out, I like met and like an actual queer person. And so then I'm like, oh, you're a person. And like the thing is like no one cared. Like no one cared. And that was really big for me, because I thought like, oh, you know, your life must be terrible. And he's like, no, my life is normal. I'm gonna have dinner tonight with my family at 6. You know, like his life was mundane, like no one cared. And like that was really big for me, because, you know, I was always afraid that like my life would just be like absolutely terrible, you know, because you watch, you know, all of these movies and that speak to, you know, real realities, of course, but I was so afraid of that happening to me that it sort of stopped me from coming out. So seeing the mundaneness of today sort of inspired me, I guess, to come out when I did. And seeing Harry Styles on the television, kind of, I was like, you know what? I'm done lying to myself.
I really grew up in the black church until I was about 12, 13, when I started going to a separate church than the rest of my family. I kind of grew up with my grandmother as like a second mother. So when my older two brothers died, my mother was kind of not really around as much and just not in as good of a place to raise me after I was born. And I spent a lot of time with my grandmother and going to a very, very traditional Black Baptist church. And I was taught and honestly believed that black people were the true children of God and the only ones accepted into heaven because of bronze skin and curly hair. And from the time I was about 7, I learned that being gay was not only a sin, but this abomination, and that if I ever did it, I would burn forever in hell. And Grandma would always tell me that if you know anyone that's gay, you should bully them. So they moved to California, where God will burn them in fire. So she was very excited about what happens when wildfires, and that was just so hard for me to reconcile when I was coming to terms with my sexuality. And I remember like being in middle school trying to figure out how I was going to live my life, and I had the whole plan worked out. I was like, I will find a nice black woman to marry because I was not allowed to marry a white woman, and I was gonna just, Craigslist was becoming a thing, so I was like, I could probably make it through. Like I had a plan to do what I needed to do to get into heaven, and that was honestly what I believed and thought until I basically realized that if I tried to live my life that way, I wouldn't live much longer.
So, about being black and queer, I feel like, because we live in a society that like praises assimilation, and So black people have in their minds, because of the society they live in, because America praises assimilation, that if they uphold this ideal of the nuclear family and the sort of, I don't know, modern man, the modern masculine family man, and they reject homosexuality, that they will be able to assimilate into society. And also, like, black men, like, they have this big issue with emasculation. So they're very afraid of being seen as feminine, because, like, femininity to a lot of black men feels like oppression. And so when they see a black man, like, being feminine and, like, being, like, comfortable in their own femininity, it looks a lot like oppression, even though it's not.
When I was asked to speak here, to be a part of this, in my head, I had two conflicts. One, I don't identify as black. I haven't identified as black in longer than most of you people alive. But I do identify as multiracial, biracial, whatever. So that in itself kind of made me really, really think about my blackness, because trust me, white America does not let me forget how black I am. As far as how it intersects with my queerness, I am of that age. I have one foot in the analog world and I have one foot in the digital world. So there is a definite divide, even amongst my generation, Generation X, a few years old, a little younger than boomers, that the word queer is slander. It's like the N-word. So I get it. I mean, I got it. I mean, people started to identify with putting the AH on the N-word, making it acceptable in pop culture, creating art around it, all of that. So I've kind of collected this queer identity, because although I saw it as slanderous for years ago, your generation uses my preferred title as slander as well. That's okay. Do you know what I mean? So I get it. I finally got that. But how this intersection of how my sexuality and my racial identity is not. It mirrors what happens in the greater culture. When someone told me once, "What do you know about being black? Because you can pass," I found that to be one of the most offensive things. Although I said don't identify as black, because I don't have that same. I just don't have that same kind of. I see what happens. I see how they look at you. I see how they look at you. And my husband, who is white as that chalkboard, sees how they look at me. And he says there's really no difference. So, am I denying myself being black and queer? Maybe. But it's one of those things that it's verbiage. It's something that you're going to have to kind of get used to, change with the times. But I've seen remarkable change. And remarkable change, you've seen remarkable change. You talk about what the difference was when you were just, 14, 15 years old. I've seen a lot more change. It was slow to come until technology changed the game. Completely changed the game.
My experience being black and queer,